Dear students, hope this lecture finds you in good health and safety. You know, once Martin Luther King Jr. said, "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands in times of challenge and controversy." So do not lose hope in this pandemic situation. Try to be braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. And always try to remember, no one is safe until everyone is safe. We know you cannot attend classes in this global crisis moment, so we are trying to transform this crisis as an opportunity for learning through virtual classes. And we request you not to waste your valuable moment. I am Joydeep Datta, lecturer in English, Government Brojolal College, Khulna. Today, I invite you to a virtual lecture. Let's begin the lecture. Have a look at the picture. What can you see in the picture? You can see somebody is inside a flying book. Okay, let's look at another picture. Again, what can you see in the picture? Two children are looking at or reading a book. Okay, let's compare the two pictures together. Carefully look at the two pictures and compare. Is there any differences in feature among the two pictures? I think you may want to say that the first one is unreal and the next one is real. Again, if we go deeper, we'll see the first one is made up story and the second one is a true fact. Dear students, can you guess what I want to indicate now? Yes, you can rightly guess. I'm trying to tell you the difference between fiction and non-fiction. But today, I'm not going to teach you the difference of fiction and non-fiction anymore. Rather, I shall discuss a non-fiction prose from your syllabus. Dear students, I shall teach you Shooting an Elephant by George Orwell from your Introduction to Prose, Fiction and Non-Fiction course of Honours First Year Syllabus, Department of English, National University. Now I would like to provide you with an outline of today's lecture. In this lecture, I shall discuss a short biography of George Orwell, plot of Shooting an Elephant, historical context of Shooting an Elephant, autobiographical elements in Shooting an Elephant, style, themes. Let's start with the short biography of George Orwell. Actually, the name George Orwell is a pseudonym. A pseudonym is a fictitious or imaginary name used by a writer. This is also called pen name or nickname. So, the real name or family name of George Orwell is Eric Arthur Blair, and he was born in 25th June 1903 and died in 21st January 1950. He is one of the 20th century's most influential and thought-provoking writers. He is an English novelist, essayist, journalist, and critic. As a novelist, he has written a number of novels. Two of his most famous novels are Animal Farm and 1984. In fact, they are also the two famous novels of 20th century. Animal Farm is a political allegory about revolution and power, and 1984 is a political novel written with the purpose of warning readers in the West of dangers of totalitarian government. Orwell is also a successful essayist, having some fascinating and critical essays. Shooting an Elephant is a masterpiece. In 1943, he became literary editor of Tribune, a left-wing magazine. As a prolific journalist, he also wrote articles, reviews, and books. Throughout his life, Orwell continually supported himself as a book reviewer. His reviews are well known and have had an influence on literary criticism. He wrote in the conclusion of 1940 essays of Charles Dickens. Orwell also wrote a critique on George Bernard Shaw's play Arms and the Man. These all are about George Orwell as a writer. Let's look at other aspects of his life. George Orwell was born in eastern India. He was a son of British colonial civil servant. He was educated in England. After completing his education, he joined in Indian Imperial Police Service in Burma. Burma was in British colony then. He resigned the job in 1927 and decided to become a writer. In 1928, he moved to Paris. In 1993, he published his first book, Dawn and Out in Paris and London. He adopted the name George Orwell shortly before publication of this book. Dear students, now I shall discuss the plot of Shooting an Elephant, but before this, let's learn what is plot and what is the structure of a plot. A plot is a chain of connected events that make up a narrative or story. The components of a plot are exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. Exposition is the beginning of a story where the characters and settings are introduced. In rising action, the main characters face a series of conflicts. Climax is the most exciting part of the story where the significant incident occurs. In falling action, the events or incidents lead to the end of the story. Finally, resolution ends the story. Dear students, I shall briefly discuss the plot of Shooting an Elephant now. The exposition is in the beginning, line number 1 to 35 of the story, where Orwell explains his current condition to the reader. He was serving in Burma as an imperial police officer. He wishes he could help the Burmese, but they treat him with contempt. Then rising action. In rising action, Orwell receives the order to handle the situation created by the elephant. It happens within line number 36 to 167. He takes his rifle, hoping to scare the elephant, and he does not plan to shoot the elephant. However, a crowd gathers, and he feels pressure to shoot the elephant. In climax of the story, which falls between line number 168 to 208, Orwell gives into the peer pressure. He could not risk looking like a fool. He shoots the elephant 5 times and it does not die. He calls for a regular rifle, but it still does not do the job. The falling action starts when Orwell leaves the dying elephant. The natives skin and pick the elephant for meat. Orwell finds out it was legal for him to shoot the elephant. Whether any of the other grabs that I had done it solely to avoid looking like a fool. In resolution, we learn some of the character flaws of Orwell. He gave into peer pressure. He tried to impress every people he started he could never fit in with. He kept up the appearance of the all-powerful empire which he hated. Dear students, now I shall discuss the historical context of the essay Shooting an Elephant. According to a number of critics, the extension of British Empire was ill planned, which created financial and moral burden for the empire. In this essay, we see the narrator doubt in his legitimacy also. Shooting an Elephant parallels the absurd and the directionless manner in which Great Britain continued to extend imperialism. In this essay, Orwell attempt to kill the elephant seems unplanned and quite absurd or ridiculous. Next, colonialism. Colonialism is the policy or practice of acquiring full or partial political control over another country, occupying it with settlers and exploiting it economically. Burma was under British colony at the time, and the narrator himself was serving as British police officer in Burma. Next, nationalism. Nationalism is the advocacy or support for the political independence of a particular nation or people. Orwell arrived in Burma at the time when Burmese natives began to assert themselves against British rule. Strikes organized by the young Buddhists paralyzed the administrative center of Rangoon. In addition, rebellions in the countryside also gained strength. Old First Order created a self-doubt among the Western people. It seemed to prove that civilization was a kind of delusion, always ready to collapse and fall prey to the violence of international conflict. Western nations also started questioning their moral capacities after participating in the bloodbath of First Order. These are the historical context which have a great influence on the plot and incidents of this story. Dear students, now I shall discuss the autobiographical elements of this essay. The incidents of the story correspond with that of the incidents of George Orwell's life. Shooting an Elephant is a first-person account of the understanding of the loss of freedom not only for the colonized but also for the colonizer. Throughout the story, Orwell recounts the days of his living in imperial police in Burma. The writing expresses not only his political ideas but also his future outlook as a political writer. Now, let's discuss the style of the story. Within the style of the story, I shall discuss now the point of view, setting, the symbol, and, and symbols. Let's start with point of view. Point of view refers to the way a story is told. The author selects a specific mode of presenting the character, action, setting, and events of his or her narrative. Now, what is narrative or narrator? A narrator is either a personal character or a non-personal voice created by the author to deliver information to the audience about the plot or the other narrative information. You see, the narrator are of two types, first person narrator and third person narrator. A first person narrator uses a person pronoun I to tell the story and can either be a major or minor character. It may be easier for a reader to relate it to a story told in first person account. A third person narrator uses the pronoun he or she and does not take part in the story. The shooting, the story of shooting an elephant is written in first person narrator where I is the writer himself. Dear student, next comes setting. A setting is a time and geographical location within a narrative, either non-fiction or fiction. Setting of shooting an elephant are colonial Burma, part of the British Empire, sometime in late 1920s or early 1930s. A district town called Moulmein. Okay, this is the picture of the district town called Moulmein. Next comes symbols. A symbol is a word or image or anything that somehow represents a larger idea. In shooting an elephant, the narrator himself is a symbol for the people over whom, as a colonial policeman, he holds authority. He is for them an image of foreign and subjective rule, and the object of their resentment and hatred. The elephant here symbolizes a captive laver who, in his animal fashion, resents his subjugation. He breaks loose, exercises his freedom, tramples on his tormentors, and finally pranks himself peacefully through in the field. Finally, I shall discuss the theme of the story, shooting an elephant. The themes of the story are conscience, cultural class, order and disorder, prejudice and tolerance. Conscience is a person's moral sense of right and wrong, viewed as acting as a guide to one's behavior. The following are the examples that exposes the conscience of the writer. The narrator's internal conflict indicates he has a conscience. His official position, not his moral conscience, causes the narrator to act in the way he does. The narrator's moral conscience appears in the moment when the dead body of the Burmese crushed by the elephant comes to his attention. The narrator says that the man lay sprawled in the crucified posture, invoking all of the emotional symbolism that the term crucified creates. The elephant, too, especially in the pain-wrecked death, evokes in the narrator's feeling of terrible pity. The next theme is cultural clash. The British represent the industrial West with its notions of civic administration and its technological excellence, and the Burmese represent a powerless pre-industrial society set up by an industrial superpower looking beyond its own border for the field of action. The Burmese despise, despise the British and the British humiliate the Burmese. Next, order and disorder. Order prevails when the mahout ties up the elephant and keeps him under control. Disorder prevails when the elephant escapes and ravages the bazaar. Disorder is a type of violence within daily affairs which breaks the peace. Disorder as a violence appears on many occasions directed against the British, when random Burmese spit Betelgeuse on passing European women, when Buddhist priests laugh spitefully at the narrator, when the umpire on the playing field looks conveniently the other way while Burmese player fouls the very same narrator. Finally, prejudice and tolerance. The narrator explains how one becomes prejudiced a state of mind in which one suppresses conscience. Even though his personal judgments are sympathetic toward the native people, he has to remain dutiful to his job and empire. Organizationally and technically, the locals are inferior. This is a kind of prejudice. Both sides, the British and Burmese, tolerate each other and remain rather neutral. Dear student, that is the end of this class today. In the next class, I'll discuss other aspects of shooting an elephant in details. So, thank you very much for your patience and sincere attention. Study and stay safe and well in the days of pandemic, and of course, follow the rules of health and safety.